Greetings my guzzlers. Waney, weedy, weeky. I came, I saw, I conquered. That's a very tenuous link to what we're going to cook tonight. Tonight we're going to make a nice heart healthy fish pie with cauliflower and carrot mash. Oh, washed down with a nice red wine, which isn't perhaps, well, it is sort of slightly heart healthy, but anyway, that's I digress. So for this fish pie, obviously you're going to want cauliflower, you're going to want carrot because that's the mash. We're going to have a little bit of soft cheese, low fat soft cheese to put into it. You're going to want some garlic, cornflour, parsley, smoked paprika. You can leave that out if you're not that keen on that. Don't know why you wouldn't be. Some milk, button mushrooms, some prawns, shrimp, prawns, frozen peas, and some white fish. Although you could do this with salmon if you wanted. Now I end up having lots of little bowls with things in it and all this washing up, and I've worked out I need 3 saucepans to do this one, plus the dish that I'm going to bake it in. And the noise you can hear is in my oven, fan oven, 160 preheated. Okay, so let's get started. And then also I'll tell you why the bit reference to Julius Caesar. So I've got about 2 medium carrots. One's a bit on the smaller side, so I've got another little one there. And what we want to do with these carrots is we're going to dice them. We're going to cook them, but obviously we want them cooked enough that we're going to mash them. So we're going to make these bits, try and dice them nice and small. Now for the other part of that mash, like I said, you want cauliflower. You're going to want about 225 grams of cauliflower florets. I've already chopped that up and weighed that out, so I probably don't need to do any more with that. You want 25 grams of low-fat soft cheese. This one's with garlic and herb. That's the preferred, but if you just soft cheese will do, you know. You don't have to have garlic and herb in it. And that's when you're going to put your paprika in, about half a teaspoon, and some black pepper. So that would be the mash element. So just going to start by, like I say, dicing this up. Now, why the reference to Julius Caesar? Well, although it wasn't fish pies, it's really Julius Caesar invading Britain, and then it sort of becoming sort of very much Roman Britain, where eating a fish became quite a big deal. It seems a bit odd given that we're an island, Britain's an island, surrounded by the sea, where you got fish, plus you get fish in rivers. It just seems to be that apparently until the Romans came along, us Brits weren't really that bothered about fish. So the tenuous link is simply the fact that because of him, because of the Romans, that's why. What did the Romans ever do for us? Gave us fish, or made us eat fish. So and actually it's most likely that even then, when they were eating the fish, it was actually river fish rather than fish from the sea. But anyway, I'm just going to finish them carrots. Like I say, me cauliflower's already chopped, and then I've got 1 leek, which I've cleaned, and I'm going to thinly slice that. The next thing you're going to want is about 50 grams of button mushrooms, and again, you just want to thinly slice them up. So like I say, so the Romans sort of seem to introduce fish eating, if you like, and then when they left Britain, by then obviously Christianity was taking quite a sort of stronghold, if you like, and it appears that the Christians sort of carried on with the idea of eating fish, and particularly they introduced sort of this concept of when it was fasting time. Fasting didn't necessarily mean to say I know I don't know an awful lot, so I might get these things wrong, but I'm pretty sure with Ramadan, which isn't Christian, I know, but in Ramadan, when they say fast, they literally mean you do not eat or drink anything during the period, or during the daytime, if you like. Whereas the Christian view of fasting was more, it was just you didn't eat certain things, one of which was meat. And so Fridays became non-meat days. And back then, in them times, particularly during the medieval times, people will put certain spins on. Let's get rid of that bit on the end there. So, for instance, fish wouldn't be classed as meat, even though vegetarians might disagree with you. And so therefore you could eat fish, and so it became a thing that during Lent and or on Fridays you ate fish. So what I've got here is 250 mils of skimmed milk. Oops. Like I said, remember this is heart health, heart healthy. And I just want to, I'm a bit restricted. I like to use my smallest pan, which is probably going to be a bit on the small side. I'm just going to start bringing that up to a boil, and then we're going to put them mushrooms and those leeks in that milk. And given the amount that is there, and given the amount of milk they want, I think they might not necessarily all go together. Oh, I didn't actually say that one of the reasons the Romans made a big deal about eating fish, for some weird reason, it was to do with the veneration of Venus, goddess of love. Anyway, I'm going to put that there, because if I leave it on there, I'm going to knock it off. So going back to what I said about Christians, it was actually during the Middle Ages, with this 40-day fasting thing for Lent, that fish pie sort of was introduced. Henry I, when he sort of came into being king, he was presented with a Christmas lamprey. Now, lamprey is a type of fish. I don't know if it's just exclusive to England or what, I don't know. It's an odd looking fish. But he was presented with a lamprey pie. And then that became a tradition. And for some weird reason, Yarmouth in England, in Britain, then decided to make it a yearly tradition of sending the king a fish pie. But given that the original one was lampreys, the pie that they then started doing for the king, in fact they sent every year 24 pies of 100 herrings. So we've gone from lamprey to herring. But that started this royal tradition. So I'm just going to wait for that to come up to a simmer, and then once it has, we're going to turn it down nice and low, and then I'm going to chuck all that in there. You want about 200 grams of fish, which isn't a lot, given this is a fish pie. So I'm going to need to skin them. Okay, let me just put that back there. So before I do that, my final bit of chopping that I need to do is this parsley. So my milk's just coming up to the boil. So I'm going to turn that down low. And this is where we're now going to start cooking. Whoops, I knew that was the fall through. Oh, you little shrike. Like I say, there's not an awful lot of room in this pan. But if I use a bigger pan, it definitely wouldn't have covered anything. So now, we just basically want to soften all these. We're not necessarily after thoroughly cooking it through. Okay. Because these will end up in the fish pie. So I'm just prodding them down. So we're going to give them about 5 minutes. And like I say, I'm going to want to chop this parsley up. That will be going in at one stage. Okay, so it's not so much a garnish this time. I think that'll do. And then I was telling you about this tradition of giving the king these pies. The prior of Llanthony, or in Gloucester, near Wales, he decided for Henry VIII in 1530 to bake him and send to him, well, he probably didn't bake it himself, a pie of eels and carp, and that became a bit of a tradition. In 1752, the then Prince of Wales got sent one, and actually this sort of tradition of sending this fish pie to royalty even went as far as Queen Victoria. So fish pie has been around a long time and is basically a British tradition. Yeah, fish pie. This is slightly different because your typical fish pie in England would be mashed potato on top, perhaps some cheese on top of that. But remember, this is heart healthy, so we varied it a little bit. So I've skinned one piece of fish, and let's just get the other done. Whoops, it's a bit thin at this end and it's not liking that. And now what we want to do is cut that into chunks. Now I should point out, by the way, that this is for 2 people. Okay. I do actually have some extra prawns, mainly because of the pack size, and I thought, well, it ain't gonna hurt, is it? And one of the problems he's doing it for 2 is trying to find a dish small enough that this ain't going to get sort of lost too much in it. So that's my fish diced up. I'm just keeping my eye on this. It is still all covered up now. It's all starting to soften. Oh, and actually that means we're now ready. So I'm going to turn that off to move to the next stage, but I need to clean my hands because of all that fish. What I want to do here is, for the moment, I want to separate out the, what on earth was I about to say? Yogurt. Separate out the leeks and the mushrooms. Okay, I'm just going to put that over there for a minute. We will, like I say, be adding these into our fish pie, but right now we just want the milk. I'm just going to leave that to drain on there. Okay, now I've used a big pan simply because, how did that bit of mushroom get in there? It probably came off of me spatula. Because we're going to add some cornflour into that. Now might be a good time as well to do this pan of water. Turn that handle so I don't end up heating heat. This is where we're going to to make our mash. So I've got some water in there, and that's where the cauliflower and the carrot will be going. I've got 25 grams of corn flour, or cornstarch, if you want to call it that. Is that 25 grams? Yeah. And then I've got about 25 mils of more skim milk. Okay. And did I say I'll put that back onto heat just to warm that to a gentle simmer. I'm just going to mix these two together, and then we're going to cook it off in there. The thing is, with using any type of flour, whether it be a roux, flour and butter, or whether it be using corn flour, is that if you don't cook the flour off, you end up with this floury sort of, I wouldn't say unpleasant, but we don't want that taste. We want what's the name? No, actually I'm just going to take that spatula out of there, because what we're going to do here is we're just going to whisk this in to that milk that's in there. Okay, and this is where we're now going to sort of start the process of cooking that off. So fish pie. Ooh, bit of a wine. There's a recipe from 1631 that talks about making a fish pie, and it says have a pastry coffin. Now that was a term in them days for like a pastry, like like we'd make a pie with pastry sort of around it. However, back then it was a little bit more of a container, so it's quite possible that's starting to thicken already. Like I say, the quantities in here, and you think what you're going to be doing with it, it's a bit odd. I'm just going to turn that heat off, because that is really thickening a lot. And at this point, what we want to do, actually I've got a bit more milk just drained off in there, let's go in there. Yeah, the coffin, the pastry, wasn't necessarily something you ate, it was more of a container. So it's quite possible. Actually, I'm just going to put some water in there, because that milk caught a bit by the looks of that. Not as in burnt, but it's sort of starting to stick on the bottom. Yeah, so oh, you bugger, make a mess over there. Oh, so they've gone into, that's me leeks, me mushrooms. I want me parsley, which I've chopped. Where are they gone? Me peas, 50 grams frozen peas, although they're not quite frozen anymore. I want me prawns. Now that's at 100 grams of peeled prawns. That started out as 150. Probably about 140 there now. I had some earlier. Me fish. Where's my spatula gone? In that goes. Oh, that's right. Oh, you bastard. On the floor. You little shit. I had to come up to the boil, so I'm going to put the carrot in there. Okay. And the cauliflower. Ooh. And now we just want to bring that back to the boil and cook that for about 10 minutes. So, the other thing that's going in there, if you want some freshly ground black pepper. And we want a few cloves of garlic. Okay. And then, other than the cheese, and that's I'll move before I forget it, and the paprika, that is all our ingredients done. So we just now want to treading on something down there. wondering what it is, and it's the end of the tea towel. I'm just going to mix all this together, and this will go into our dish, but I'm going to leave it in here for now until my mash is ready. So I was telling you about this pie, this recipe, 1631, no, yeah, 1631, with a pastry coffin, and essentially the ingredients were pickled herring, pears, raisins, currants, cinnamon, sugar, dates, boiled claret, verjuice, which is like a concentrated grape juice, if you like, sugar, cinnamon and butter. So quite a rather sweet fish pie rather than a savoury one. Right, I think there's that. Now I'm going to attempt, actually let me put my timer on for about 10 minutes for that, although it's not quite up to temperature. Well, it is now, it's just starting to come there. And I'm going to attempt to do me mashing with me rice, potato ricer. Right, so this is the dish I've got that I'm going to bake it in. Like I say, for 2 people, it's going to be spread a bit thin. That mash is going to be very thin on top. 1895, let's move forward a bit. Mrs. Wilkinson, in her cookery book, Mrs. Wilkinson's cookery book, she talks about a fish pie, and this seems to be one of the first documented fish pies that is more typical of the type of fish pie we'd make today in Britain, with a bechamel sauce. You've got to understand that sauces got introduced to England sort of quite late on. Well, they didn't get introduced quite late on. They didn't really get accepted till quite late on, because they were foreign, weren't they? So the French, you had sauces, you know, loads of different types of sauces for everything. If you haven't gathered, by the way, I'm just now tipping that mixture into here. Okay. Yeah, the French had sauces for everything. Just going to run some water in that. But when it was sort of talked about, let's have some sauce, let's try this. We don't mess around with foreign things. So it did take a little while to get used to having sauces. But she introduced one with not only bechamel sauce in it, but with a breadcrumb topping. And then in 1895, in another cookbook called Plain Cookery Recipes, they talk about having a mashed potato topping. And again, that's getting much more closer. Pardon me. Must be the thought of that cauliflower, which gives you wind. Oh, it doesn't mean anyway. Yeah, much more closer to what we would have today as a traditional pie. Fish pie. Right, so we're just waiting on that to finish cooking, about 5 minutes to go. Check the cauliflower. The cauliflower isn't that soft at the minute. It had about 3 minutes left to go, so I've added a little bit more time. But once that's cooked enough, I'm going to strain that off, and then we'll be putting it from the strainer into the masher. Can do it the other hard, you know, with a potato masher or whatever you want. But like I say, I'm going to try and use my rice masher. Not rice rasher, my potato ricer, which I previously made sweet potato mash with that, and it does a really good job of it. So I'm hoping it'll do it with this. Did you know the most expensive fish pie ever was poached? The fish and the stuff in it was poached in Dom Perignon champagne. Apparently it cost £545. The trouble is, I don't know when that was. Now, I was talking about being heart healthy, got no carbs in it. Well, the minute bit from the cornflour. but obviously we're not using potato mash. Although using potatoes isn't necessarily unhealthy, but it's just carbs, isn't it? Plenty of fibre, protein from the fish and everything. But eating fish, if you have about 2 to 3 servings of fish a week, you actually you actually reduce your risk of death from heart-related conditions by about 17%, which I know is not a huge amount, but if it reduces it, it must be good. So it's obviously not quite like mash in the way that we think of potato mash. Okay, but actually could have perhaps been done with being, oh bloody hell, going bleeding everywhere. Get in there. Did notice you get quite a lot of moisture out when you first do this, so you might want to just sort of drain that like I did off first. Actually, I might just do that last remaining bit, and then clean up the bloody mess. So I'm just going to finish that off, and then we'll do the final stages of that mash. So that's all my mash in there. Just going to add in that cheese. Not quite the same as having a cheese topping, but remember, this is heart healthy. So just going to mix all that in thoroughly, and like I say, that's going to be a very, very thin crust on top of that. So actually, if I'm mentioning fish pies, there is a famous fish pie from Mousel, sorry. It's pronounced or written Mousehole, one word, down in Cornwall, where they make quite a unique fish pie. I'm just making sure I'm getting all that all mixed in together, because it's not quite the same as normal mash, if you like. Yeah, so down there they make something known as a stargazy pie. It actually started around about the 16th century, and it's a fish pie with pastry on top. It's got pilchards, but the pilchards are whole, and they're arranged so the heads are sticking out the top. So when you look at your pie, there's all the fish looking at you. There you go, that's about it. So that limited amount of mash now needs to be spread evenly over the top of that. Ideally, I'd probably wanted a deeper, smaller dish. Okay, but I've got some of that on there, and now we're just going to finish that off by just giving that a little bit of black pepper over the top. And then, like I say, this is optional. If you don't really like paprika, it doesn't really matter. You don't have to do this. We're just going to give it a little sprinkle of smoked paprika over the top. Now that's going to go in the oven. Now it says for about 25 to 30 minutes, essentially till it's starting to go brown and bubbling. That's going to bubble quite easily because obviously I can still see some of the fish layer, as it were. So I'll see how long it takes, and then obviously we'll be trying it out. Okay, so that's had about 25 minutes. It has started to brown on top. I don't know if it's bubbling, but it's certainly, well, it is actually. I can just see right on the edge it is actually bubbling. So like I say, this is for 2 people. It does seem like there's a lot there for 2 people, but bear in mind it's quite thin. Okay. Whoop! Don't you dare go there, fall over. So, oh you shit. That's right, make a mess all over my nice clean hob. So, just going to spoon some of that out there. Pick up that bloody chunk of fish that's down there, and that's down there, and then I've got all my washing up done. So apart from this in the morning, At least I ain't got to come down tomorrow morning to loads of washing up like I normally do when I cook of an evening. Because I normally can't be asked to do it in the evening, I do it in the morning. Right. So, let's give this a taster. So, it is a bit more of the inside rather than the outside, as it were. The leek's nice and tender. Peas, I think could have benefited for a bit of salt, to be honest. If you notice, there was no salt actually went in the recipe. I mean, you can always add all salt afterwards, but for something that says it's mash, there's not an awful lot of mash with it. It is mainly leek, fish. The mash when you have it is odd, a bit watery, but if you're on a Weight Watchers diet, after that it's only 3 points. There's bugger all in this, I tell you, points wise. It's tasty. I would say you definitely want a bit of salt in that, but at the end of the day, it's a fish pie as such. Actually, I've just realised that carrot comes through quite strongly as well. But, whoops, there you go. Your heart healthy fish pie with carrot and cauliflower mash. Oh, I'm getting some garlic now.